Hi again. In this video, we're going to look at media that is used within websites, and basically it's pretty much the same media that is used everywhere else. So I think it's a case of what I'm going to do is describe different types of media, why they're beneficial, and then ultimately it's going to be a case for you guys to go and actually apply this and actually think of different contexts and actual examples of where they could be used. So you will actually need to think of specific examples rather than just go, oh, it's used for displaying information very quickly, for example. Okay, so let's move on and get started. So the different types of media that we're going to look at are text, images, video, audio, and animation. Now, there are more types of media out there, such as simulation. However, generally, I don't think personally that you would find simulation used that much in websites, so I am omitting that from this list. However, these 5 different types you will see frequently, and therefore I think it's good to address them and have a little look at each one of them, have a look at some potential advantages, disadvantages, and so on. So text is probably the most obvious one. It's going to be on pretty much every web page you look at, and the reason why you would have text is to give information and primarily in a very detailed manner. So one of the good things with it is that it will say generally very explicitly what it is looking for. For example, the text on this slide here. When I talk about richer information, it means that it can describe, like I said, very explicitly the types of things that it is, or you want the person that is viewing the site to know. So, you might want to talk about various different issues that are in the media, or you might want to explain something very explicitly, and text is a very good way to do that, because it generally, as long as it is written well, leaves no grey areas. Now, obviously, there are issues with text in terms of if your standard of the language that the text is written in, so English is probably the most common. If it is not up to par, then you will find that any text that is written in massive amounts of detail could be hard for you to read. Also, there are people who may have dyslexia or a number of different learning needs that may find text to be difficult to read, because generally what you'll find is that websites will be written in very standard sans serif type fonts, and people who may have issues such as dyslexia may find that is difficult for them to read off. It's also far more time consuming, so in order to read lots of text, it's going to take you a significant amount of time to actually sit and read and digest and potentially think about what the article or whatever the text has been used for is trying to say. You can also do things like emphasizing text. Obviously, you can style it in different ways. Now, on a web page, you're slightly constrained with exactly what you can do, but you can still change it to reflect certain types of emphases. So you can make it bold, you can make it different colors. Making it colors is a risk on the website because you may come across people that have forms of color blindness. It's much more prevalent in men than it is in women. Something like 1 in 7 men, I believe, have some kind of color blindness, and therefore, like I said, it is a risk. Moving on to images. So images are used to provide something visually, and the reason why I've got the speed image here is because if you think about when you are driving, or for those of you who don't drive, imagine that you're driving and you're driving at 60, 70 miles an hour along a road, and you're passing these signs, and what they're actually, rather than having this image, they replace it with text, and the text says, would you awfully mind not driving at 30 miles an hour along this stretch of road, because it may cause an accident, and if you don't drive at 30 miles an hour, if you drive at 40 miles an hour along this stretch, then you might get arrested. Then actually by the time you've got probably past 2 or 3 words, you've driven past the sign anyway, so you won't read it. You're also distracting yourself from the road, which isn't a good thing. So what you want with this sort of thing is to give the images very, very quickly. The user will look at it, and anybody that's been driving, I mean, to be honest, most people that even haven't been driving will know what this sign means. It is an order to drive within the speed limit, which at this case is set at 30. In the UK, it doesn't usually have MPH at the bottom, but it was just an example to try and show you that, you know what it is, glancing at it straight away. You don't need to think about it. Sometimes you may find that images will provide a lot of visual feedback straight away, and it will do it much quicker than some text, which is great. But the downside with images is that you can find that images can be misinterpreted. So one image will mean something to one person and something to somebody else. That's the downside. Obviously, also, if you have a highly detailed image on a web page, you will find that it's going to take up more of your data. It's going to take up longer time to load. If you are on a mobile phone, you may find that it is much more difficult to see an image, because obviously mobile phone screens are that much smaller, and you may be on the move. So, there are pros and cons of all of this, and that's why you would use a range of different media in order to provide the information that you are looking for. So an example of what I mean by images might be misinterpreted is that it is just a optical illusion type image. It's designed to be in this way, but you can kind of rinse and repeat across many other different types of images that you see. Some of them won't be on purpose. So with this picture here, you can either see there's a young lady, so you can see her eye is here, her nose is here, her ear is here, and she's looking in this direction, and she's got like a hat on and so on. Or you can see the older lady who has this massive, humongous nose, and she's got her mouth down here, and this, rather than being an ear, is now an eye, and she's looking more in this direction. Okay, and so it's designed that people generally look at it and you see either or woman, and this is what I'm trying to just kind of impress on you, that actually images, as a person, we all see different things when we look at images. Videos and animation, you'll find are similar in terms of their descriptions. A series of still cells giving the illusion of movement, used for a variety of different reasons, for entertainment to instruction. You'll find that videos are used way more than animation, because the level of detail is much greater than the animation, and therefore you can do much more with it. So you'll find that, for example, wildlife programs maybe as a video, or if you want something extremely explicit, and you may find it as a video. Also, it's seen as a much more, I can't think of a better word, that professional videos. So you're going to find that things which are meant to be serious will be displayed as videos within the main. Now, one of the downsides you have with videos is, because of that high level of detail, they're likely to be huge file sizes, and that there are two different ways this impacts you. You can either stream the videos, which is common if you look at a website such as YouTube. So the video will download and play as you are watching it, and obviously that will have a impact on the other websites you're using at the same time. But also, if your speed isn't very good, then it's going to be quite a slow and arduous process, and you'll find that maybe you're able to watch a few seconds and then it has to stop, and then you have to wait until it downloads a little more, and then you continue the progress onwards. It can also be impact on the screen that you're viewing it on. So if you're viewing it on a nice big screen, it's going to look great potentially, whereas if you're looking at it on a mobile device, it's not going to look quite as good, although obviously the mobile screens are getting better and better, and they're not too bad, but it's never going to be quite the same. Now I've actually put on the next slide a clip in error. I meant to put this in the animation section, but I guess, in terms of animation and video, I mean, I guess it will have similar pros and cons. So this is a trailer for a video game, and it's called Skyrim, and it is a couple of minutes long. I'm not going to play all of it, but I do kind of, when we're kind of viewing it, okay, it is an animation, but it has similar kind of pros and cons for both animation and video. So I'm just going to play it and have a think about what this video is actually showing to you as we're playing it. I realised I said I wouldn't play all of it, and I ended up playing all of it. But I think what we can take from that is that was a 2-minute clip, and the amount of information that we got given on that 2-minute clip is phenomenal. So if we're thinking about the settings, you can think about, it shows you terrain that's covered in snow, it tells you mountain-based terrain, it shows you dungeon-based terrain. Get the words out right in the end. It shows you the types of enemies you'll be fighting. You've got giants, spiders, dragons, you've got all sorts there. You've got all this mystical stuff going on. I mean, if you were to sit down and actually describe this to someone, it would take you way, way longer than 2 minutes. What you've also got in there is I managed to put the video in twice. That was good effort. What you've also got in there is audio, and Skyrim in particular is a massive standard bearer for the quality of audio, and hopefully you could hear it clearly because it was coming out from my PC and then going through my microphone and so on. But now I know it's not a website, but I think the thing that you can take from this is the impact that audio can have on something. So, it's setting the scene. It kind of brings emotion into the types of things that you're doing. Now, audio isn't that common on websites. It certainly wouldn't generally play when you load a website, and the reason for that is you never quite know who's going to be looking at it, and you'll get some people that will frankly be very irritated by it. So it's generally better practice to have it available potentially, but not necessarily playing. It is good in terms of also you can give user feedback. So let's say, for example, if you or if an end user clicks on a button, you may have the standard thing, maybe something like that. Or it could be a recognition that the user has clicked on something that they shouldn't have done, and they'll get an error message. So it's kind of nice to get a bit of feedback as a user. Of course, there is also the option that a lot of people will probably have their audio turned off. So you have got to be a little bit careful with it. With audio, the most common example of that is through radio. I got no stats to back it up on me, but generally you would use audio where you are unable to view or read something. So let's say you could be driving somewhere, or you may be on the move, or it may just be a case of you're doing something else. So let's say, for example, if I was marking some work, I may have that on my laptop or whatever it is I'm marking it on, and I may have a bit of radio on in the background to give me a bit of background noise, or listen to some sport or whatever it might be. But I wouldn't be able to sit and listen or actually act on it because I'm doing something else at the time. Good practice on websites to, if you are having a lot of audio, to have audio transcripts, so have what is there written out. Now on these videos you'll notice that there are captions available to you. That's twofold. Like I said, the likelihood is that you may or may not be listening to me. Also, what happens if you are partially, or if you don't have 100% hearing? It's more common than you would think. It's giving people that availability to get the same information as everyone else. It is very good practice to do that. It can take longer to listen. I mean, I've been waffling now for nearly 17 minutes according to my timer. So it can take a while to kind of get through as an audio thing, but you get other stuff from it. So I'm able to kind of emphasize stuff that I need to, or you can just give more information with tone and intonation and various different things. Or I might just have put you to sleep. Who knows? But anyway, on a website, audio probably isn't as common as some of the other stuff we've gone over, but is still available. And the last slide is animation, which is similar to a video slide, but is designed to be, I've got the word less, it should be more cartoony and child friendly. Now, the Skyrim video I showed you technically is animation, but it's a video game, so it's not quite the same. But if it's on a website, it almost certainly is designed to be quite cartoony, quite child friendly, quite colourful. Now, what you're going to have there is potential reliance on things like plugins, because things that use, for example, Adobe Animate, a lot of websites will ask you whether you need to install things like Flash before you play it. The video size is likely to be smaller than animation, but it'll be bigger than the audio files. So I've realised that that's something I didn't touch on the previous slide. Audio files are likely to be smaller than both animation and video, which is obviously good if you're using data or have a data restriction for it. Animation is more hit and miss, I think. It's certainly hard. It's actually harder for, I would say, somebody to create an animation than it is to create a video. I mean, these days you can create a video on your mobile phone. You've got a webcam. I've got 2 webcams actually. I mean, I choose not to use them on these videos because you don't really want to be seeing me, and it's not really necessary. But on different videos, I have used them, or if I'm if I want to record something in particular. You can use them, but with animations you would actually need to draw it, or you would need to use assets from elsewhere. So when I talk about assets, they could be character models, backgrounds, and so on. and you need to be able to use programs like and animate to a reasonable level, which actually isn't that easy, because very few schools actually will do that type of topic, because it is difficult. But I've gone on for quite long enough now. I think the key thing is that when you are looking at this stuff, the media is common. Okay, all of these media that I've discussed, these 5 types of media, that are common pretty much everywhere. And it's a case of thinking, okay, well, these are used in most scenarios that you can think of, but how are you going to adapt it, or maybe write about it in terms of how it's used on web? And I'm looking for, when you are writing this up, specific examples. So don't just say animation is used to entertain. I don't want that. It's right, but when you're talking about specific examples, you could say animation is used on the CBeebies website. I don't know if it is, I've not been on there myself, but I'd imagine it is, because it's designed at kids, in order to entertain, etc., etc., waffle. Okay? So again, thank you for listening. Hopefully you guys enjoy your day, and good luck with this task.